Welcome to the Better Outcomes podcast, where we discuss all things leadership, sales, and communication in Australian business. At Better Outcomes Training, we provide world-class training solutions for businesses who want to arm their teams with cutting-edge skills to lead better, sell better, and enjoy more success, purpose, and profit from the work they do. For a full breakdown of all the courses we offer, visit www.better-outcomes.com.au. There's also a link in the description. Now, on to today's podcast. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Outcomes Workcast. Workcast. How am I going this morning?
Keep going with it.
Sunday morning, he's just smashing it out of the park, people. What an intro. Paulie, I'm off. How are you?
Cuz I'm absolutely electrifying on a Sunday morning, mate. What can I say? I've got my lumberjack shirt on, and as I say, I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay.
We're in a mood today, people. I'm already scattered. We had a big day on the mats yesterday at jiu-jitsu and a few other things. Admin, horrible. And grand final day. And then watched a bit of the rugby. Got lots of chores done outside, and which was good because the weather's packed up again in Melbourne today. So time to talk about other things. Carrying on from last week, Paulie, we talked about stress in the workplace, yeah?
Absolutely, cuz, absolutely. And we seem to be able to cover off a lot more than what we initially thought. So well done on you for great hosting of this and saying, you know what, on the fly, let's make it a two-parter. Love it. Huge fan.
Yeah, it was on the fly, actually, because we just had so much more to get through. So, last week we talked about a few things, but mainly about what causes stress, how common it is in the workplace, ways to deal with certain things, like how to deal with difficult people if you're coming across them, even down to the types of stress and learning how to relax and get a flow state, things like that. But this week, I thought it'd be quite good if we could talk about effective ways on managing that stress and how me and you deal with it, and ways to cope, or ways to start learning how to manage your levels of stress in the workplace and in your personal life as well, because they're interconnected. I think one of the big ways is, and the main one for me is becoming self-aware on your own stress. Sometimes it's like yourself, you spend a lot of time with people, teaching people in pressure situations. You put them under the pump when they come to get some learning off you and go to your trainings, and you can really start to see stress come out in other people.
Yeah.
If you need to get to the point where you're self-aware and you can notice your own signs of when you're starting to get stressed and how that comes out in you, and then you can take action to try and mitigate it, turn it off, remove yourself from the situation or everything. Yeah. So Paulie, talk to me about the ways you can become self-aware and how you can also begin to see patterns in stress in others, how it shows up.
Yeah, because it's a great question. And you know what? I think that in the world of professional development, there's a huge amount of talk about things like self-awareness, and people will put up well-meaning memes of always be self-aware, and it will click farm. You know, there'll be so many positive likes. Yes, yes, yes. But the thing is I think that it's something easy to talk about, but it's not easy to do. It really isn't. It really isn't. And the more I see this, the more I'm convinced that the human brain has almost like that hardwiring. As soon as stress comes in that overwhelms us, we go to fight or flight. And that's when we say, and I mean, I'm using that term fight or flight or freeze in an extreme situation here. But I think there's a few different ways to be able to identify or create what I'm going to refer to as self-awareness. I think if we're going to look at defining self-awareness, I think it's very much considering your impact on yourself and your impact on other people. And, you know, we can bring in things like emotional self-awareness, emotional control, this type of thing as well. I think with regards to, you know, firstly, everybody's saying, oh, we need to be self-aware. And I would agree with that in theory. But I think that, again, as soon as that amygdala gets jacked, then effectively we are not necessarily thinking in the moment. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I look for. Firstly, this understanding with regards to, you can either learn to develop a degree of self-awareness or emotional self-control or emotional awareness by the negative outcomes you get from not managing them, or start being proactive with, okay, I need to be aware of what's going on here. Now, it's a fascinating concept, because I think if you think about it, the greatest speech you ever regret, or the greatest, the things you regret normally are done when you're not in a resourceful frame of mind. I'm willing to bet. And I think that very often we don't think about these things naturally. We get into them. So I think that it's a big issue. But I also think it comes from a place of insecurity a lot of the time. I think that people being, acting in a way that they're not happy with afterwards in hindsight, or they could have done better. I think a lot of that time that comes from insecurity. And you can think about it from this point of view. If you feel like you're in control of the situation, you're in control of yourself, there is no direct threat to you, that amygdala is not going to get spiked. And that's why, again, I come back to, and I know we sound like a broken record, but coming back to that professional self-esteem and the confidence that comes with that. And that's something I teach people, or we teach people to cultivate and develop. That means you're in a much better state of mind to be able to identify what's going on around you. And then you can start, when you start seeing things that are starting to become a threat to you, and you can feel your body start to warm up, you can at least be a lot more aware of it. I think that when we are very insecure, very often, bang, something happens, we can overreact on a negative reaction. And I think that comes from often from a place of insecurity, or not feeling that we can actually deal with this in the right frame of mind. So my indication as to whether people are being self-aware or not being self-aware is, I have to come back to that question with regards to what are the outcomes you're getting. If you're getting good outcomes, then you probably don't need to check yourself, as I'm saying. But very often we find ourselves in situations where we're not getting good outcomes. And what I mean by that is, we blow up at a coworker, or we are, very often we're not able to manage the stress that we're in at that particular time. And I think that is an indication that we're not getting a good outcome. And anytime I'm looking for a reminder as to when to make a change, I need to check my outcome. So the profile, we've got outcomes, strategies, techniques, and understandings, and mindset. And if I'm not getting the right outcomes, I need to check my strategies, techniques, and understandings. If those are in the right place, there's something else going on here. That's when I really need to be able to create a higher degree of self-awareness and maybe emotional self-control as well. And here's the other thing, folks. There is a price to pay if you lose control of yourself, if you lose that emotional, mental control, that self-awareness. If you lose that, you're going to pay a price. Because if you say or do something that then impacts somebody else in a negative way, there's a price to pay. Even if that price is just a weakening of the relationship which you have with a person, and they don't trust you anymore because you've just exploded at them. Okay, it's an interesting concept to take on. Now, that is my big picture indicator. It's always, what is the outcome you're getting? Because if my client says to me, Paul, I'm getting a perfect outcome, awesome. We don't need to do anything. If you're getting the outcomes you're after, beautiful. If there's things you want to improve, now we need to check into what you're doing, okay? But if you're getting perfect outcomes, then don't mess with the system. We're going in a good place. Yeah, I mean, maybe I might say always, develop the professional self-esteem aspects and the ongoing learning and stuff. But that's by the by. The second thing is how to become sort of self-aware. I think realistically, we need to look for early warning signs. Early warning signs that maybe we're not going to a good place. Mm-hmm. And very often, when I say a good place, I'm talking about physically, mentally, and emotionally. So often, if your boss says, listen, I want to have a meeting with you, and the brain naturally goes to a negative frame of mind, we might not be able to think about, okay, I'm going to a negative frame of mind already, because very often we're busy and the conscious part of the brain is actually attached to what we're dealing with in that particular moment. But on some level, we're dwelling away of, oh my goodness, what's my boss going to say? And that starts riling us up. So often, I think that we worry about these things that get overwhelming. We worry about them on a subconscious basis. And my best indicator for that when I'm training people on this is your mind might not tell you that something's going on, because again, particularly if it's on the subconscious and you're thinking about it in not in a logical state, because logically you're working on something in front of you right now, then very often your mind might not tell you, therefore you're not going to have a high degree of awareness. But here's the kicker, is if I'm starting to go to a negative frame, negative place, and my mind is focused on something else, then very often I realize my mind won't tell me about it, but the kicker is my body will. Okay, so what does that mean? It's that warming of your tummy. It's the adrenaline rush. Maybe you can feel the jelly in your legs. Maybe your heart starts to beat a little bit faster. Maybe your breathing becomes a bit shallower. And that to me is a physiological reaction to somewhere where my mind is going. My mind's not going to a helpful place. So I need to be able to, that's my early warning sign to stop any negative overwhelm before it gets there. Is that along the lines of what you were looking for there, Cuz?
Yes, precisely. It's something that took me a while to understand and start to come to terms with. Dealing with, I thought it was just because I was getting frustrated. A lot of the time I spent years thinking, oh, geez, I'm just getting frustrated with what's happening, and, you know, start to jump around a little bit and couldn't control thoughts and things like that. But then I realized that I could feel it coming on. I could start to feel coming on. And like you talk about with when you have an outcome that's not so great, you know, whether you've exploded at a coworker or you've got a bad outcome. If you get enough of those, it's the old case of if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you'll keep getting that outcome. You want to change it, you've got to look back at what happened before and the lead up to it.
Yeah.
And then start to think, okay, well, I had this going on at home. My kids are crook. So there was a bit going on. And then learn the signs of, you know, well, I'm going to start to lose it here. You can feel it coming on.
Yeah.
For me, I do lists. I don't know whether it's mental lists or what, just to keep everything kind of in order and what's the most, I shuffle through them and this is the one I can do today and things like that. And it gets to the point where I can feel it coming on. Usually when I'm tired towards the end of the week, or I've had a big week or something, or lots have built up. I've had a stressful week. Where it's like my mind starts to go berserk. I can feel it coming on, and it's like, to explain it, it'd be like the lists are like open tabs in a browser on a page. Some people have 2 or 3. I've got about a dozen. Some people have 700 open. We won't talk about those kind of people who have 700 open. They know who they are. We'll deal with that later. And what happens to me, to explain it best, is that my brain starts clicking on tabs uncontrollably and my mind starts to jump between tabs. I can't hold a thought. Yeah. And when I feel that coming on, all right, it's time. Either I need some rest, I need to get away from the situation, what's happened, and I stop and I start thinking about what's going on. But that took me a while to get to and understand that it wasn't just me getting frustrated. It was me getting overwhelmed with everything that was building up on me. So, learning to become self-aware, and everyone's different, you know, everyone gets to those stages at different times and different speeds, and hopefully today we can help you out with some managing and coping techniques. But that's I think is one of the big things, becoming self-aware to make sure that you're not only handling yourself. We talked about this last week about self-preservation is number one. You've also, I see it as having a bit of a duty of care to those around you as well, close friends and other co-workers, depending on your instance. Keep an eye on them as well, because like you said, the body will start to tell signs. And if you notice the pattern, which you do from training so many people, you start to notice those signs, you can start to maybe better to have a look at this person, or keep an eye on them, or talk to them, or, hey, what's going on? Can I get your hand with some extra work or something like that? So I think it's quite important. It's
a big thing, Kaz. It really is a big thing. And it's, again, I think to keep an eye out for people in that situation. And you're quite right, mate. It's something that I see on the regular. Whenever I'm training people, there's obviously agreed content that we're going to go through. But my goal really is rather than just give a one-size-fits-all type of approach to the training and just go through it and just me talking and stuff like that and them discussing things and what have you. I really want to get an idea of what I can help people with, And here's the interesting thing: it's like I'll do that in the and I'll say to people, it's like, listen, you're all going to have individual challenges, and I think that it's a great release for people, because I think very often when somebody's going through their own individual challenge, they feel like they're truly isolated in that situation. So when you can when you can say to somebody, listen, you're all going to have individual challenges. So I've just met them at their view of the world effectively. That's an understanding. If they've got something that's keeping them up at night, I want to help them with it, and they feel like, oh, thank goodness, because I think I'm the only person who's ever had this problem. And then I'll justify why that's true, because I'll say, because you're all dealing with different stakeholders, different, problems, you've got different qualifications, different sectors, all of this stuff. And it's almost like people start opening up a whole lot more, which is crazy. And I use certain techniques to build rapport very quickly with my audiences. And, it's all part of the stuff I teach. But the most fascinating thing is how quickly people will open up to you when you take that type of approach. So you're building rapport, and people will open up very quickly, and you can see it sometimes, because you can see people who are carrying a lot, and it's like, okay, I've got to figure this out right here. And it comes back to people saying you run very similar courses. I mean, there's about 16 or 17 different courses I run, but it's like you run the same ones again and again and again. It's like, yeah, it doesn't become boring though, because you have to figure each person out as best you can, and sometimes you hit that nail, you hit the nail there with opening people up, and everybody sharing what they're after, and ask deeper questions to get a deeper understanding of what's the root cause here and what's going on. And sometimes you can see it, you can hear the what's the word? You can hear the I'm going to use a more basic word, I suppose. You can hear the emotion in when people are trying to share the stuff with you, and you can see it in their eyes sometimes, and then you can see it with regards to the pain that it's causing, but also you can start getting an idea as to where it's coming from. And when I say where it's coming from, with regards to, potential beliefs that people hold, and these beliefs become so disempowering, which is so brutal. And it's such an evil thing, formulating beliefs to create growth mindsets or victim mindsets for people. And that's a whole other conversation, but it ruins people. It really ruins them. And you can hear this pain in them, and I mean, they're talking to a room of strangers here, and we're maybe an hour into it, but we've been able to create that connection that people are sharing it. They're talking about something, but they're talking about one level of it. And I can sense this. I can sense what else is going on underneath there. And it's in the eyes sometimes. It's in the mannerisms, how the mannerisms shift. It's the battle with eye contact sometimes. It's quite fascinating. It really, really is. And as you go through the day, as you go through the training, and you especially when you get into your 2, 3, 4-day, 5-day workshops, those defenses come down even further. People connect with you deeper, and then you really start getting an idea of what's going on there, and it's quite fascinating. It really, really is. But yeah, keeping an eye out on what other people are battling with, and again, I think it's so much of the stress that we deal with is certain tied around beliefs that we hold about ourselves and about other people, and I see people who are they are meaningfully supportive. They're trying to be supportive, but they're doing it in a way that gives a lot of long-term negativity for people, Yeah, and it's brutal. It's a prison of the mind that's been cultivated, I think, But anyway, there we go.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother podcast. We'll get onto that one. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, maybe 2 podcasts. So techniques or areas where we can start looking at to help manage and relieve some of the stress. I've got a few written down here, but maybe one of the good ones to start with would be communication, especially in the workplace. I was going to start with another one, but I think communication in the workplace around difficult conversations.
Yeah.
Around letting others know how you feel. We've just talked about being able to be self-aware and spot signs and what others are doing.
Yeah.
but also learning to say no. I
Yeah.
think is a big one. And you just spoke about it then, about how everyone learns at a different rate or a different time in their life and has a different area that's either giving them trouble or they're concentrating on. And so learning to be aware of that in them when you can, and then learning their capabilities, which will help you manage expectations in amongst your team. But communication, these difficult conversations, I think, are a big cause of stress in the workplace because of the domino effect that it can have.
Yeah.
I think some people, and a difficult conversation is only learning how to say no to someone. Maybe even it's in learning how to say no to your boss who's giving you too much extra work.
Yeah.
Or it's learning to set boundaries around yourself, around how much you've got on or how much you can do or where you think you are or going. It's not big, hard, difficult conversations in terms of, hey, listen, I've got to have a difficult conversation with you. You're going to get sacked or I'm going to leave. It's not those kind of conversations difficult. It's the small end that people don't realize are building up into big ones.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Paulie?
Yeah, but build on that, cuz, because I think that there's something massive there. There really is. Build on that with regards to how we're building it up.
Well, it can start simply, like you said earlier, with your boss. You're working away and your boss says, hey, I need to see you soon. And it's just there. It's just there. And then he says, hey, listen, I know you're under the pump. Can you just quickly take this file on and give it a look over for tomorrow? Or, hey, we've got these meetings. You know what I mean? And it's just these little things that build up.
Yes.
Build up and build up, and learning to set boundaries around yourself, around your capabilities at work and your abilities, how much workload you've got on or how much more you want to take on. Learning to say no to people, I think that's where a lot of the problems start. Instead of one big thing, it can be 10 or 12 or a couple of little things that build up and cause problems. Yeah,
absolutely. 100%. I had to laugh because you said, when your boss says to you, listen, I want a word with you or I want to have a chat with you, it's like, oh my God, what's going on here? And then you turn up and they say to you, oh, I just want you to have a look at this folder, please, this file, and give me your expert opinion. It's like, it kind of reminded me of a story I tell when you go to the if you go to the doctor, you got a doctor's appointment. Let's say you've got a rash on your arm, of course. Okay, you got a rash, and it's like you're thinking all the worst things in the world. This is a terror. This is the end of me, and everybody's going to laugh at me and what have you. You walk in, you're building this stuff up so big in your head, and the doctor goes, "Oh, don't worry about that. I see it every single day." It's like, just take this shot here, and it'll be absolutely fine. It's like all of a sudden you think, "Oh, thank God!" I thought it was going to be like the end of me,
That's right.
You always got to give the boss a hug.
Is that all? Is that all it was? All that stress?
Building this stuff up in my mind. I'm gonna take my resume down from Seek.
That's right. Yeah, you walk into an office with a piece of paper, resignation written on it, and he only wants to see you about something else. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That can help. That can be a cause too, where we talked on briefly last week, where on Friday you get told you have to deal with someone on Monday, someone that you don't particularly like, and that bears on you all weekend, and your imagination blows it up, and you run through all these different scenarios, and it ends up being 5% of what you built up in your mind. So, but yeah, the communication around those kind of things, setting boundaries, even on work-life balance.
Yeah.
Maybe turning your phone off at 5 o'clock. There's a lot of different techniques, Paulie. So what are some of the better techniques that you've found, even on teaching people how to say no?
Yeah. Okay. So I think we'll get on to teaching saying no. And there's a few things I think hopefully will be helpful with this. But the first thing is I want to be proactive with consistently working on building good relationships. That's what I want to do. It's like, that is, if I can build good relationships with people, 99% of the time, it's like it's going to be good conversations, even if it's bad news, So that's why I think that ongoing professional development in the communication spectrum, even if you're just reading, 1 page a day or something like that, you're taking on stuff that will help you, because I'm convinced of this. The better you could communicate with yourself and with other people, very often dictates the amount of purpose you take from the work you do. I'm convinced of it. So I think that's a big one. Here's the other thing, and very often when it comes to assertiveness training, it's the big one that comes up. Often with those difficult conversations with making boundaries and stuff like that, I have team members who are attending, and stop me if I've told the story before, but you have team members who are wanting to come to the training because they want to learn to say no to their bosses with regards to, no, I can't take on any more work because I already have way too much work. Now, with that said, they say to me they want to learn to build boundaries or put boundaries up. And then I ask them the question, is it that you want to have the words to say, or is it that you have a bigger problem with the confidence or feeling comfortable with it? And then you get very non-committal answer from time to time. And I understand it's non-committal because that's the first time people have actually thought of it from that point of view. Is it the words or is it the confidence to actually say the words? Because we'll take a different approach based on whatever. And then the response ultimately comes, if I don't pre-frame it and take this comment off the table, they say it's a bit of both. My belief is that they don't feel confident and comfortable in doing it. And here's why. Because very often saying no to your boss could be what people believe in their minds a CLM. It certainly could be a career limiting move. Also, people don't want to be seen as not part of the team. They don't want to be seen as non-contributors. All of those things, so they want to be able to say yes to the team and yes to the boss. And here's the thing. They are terrified of the reaction that's going to happen. And it's perfectly understandable. Problem is, it just doesn't serve us. So there's a couple of little insights I want to share here. Firstly, how you communicate something dictates the outcome you get. An example of this is, if my boss comes to me and says, Paul, I want you to do A, B, and C, and I turn around and say no, it's probably not going to get me a very good response. But if they come up to me and say, Paul, I need you to do A, B, and C, I say, hey, boss, great to see you. How are you? I would absolutely love to take that on. Situation is, I'm working on project X, Y, and Z right now, which you'll recall from the meeting. I do have some resource next week, if you'd like to, where I could do it for you, because my calendar is a little bit full of it. Or, hey, boss, how is it? Good to see you. I'd love to take that on. I'm working on ABC project at the moment, which you're familiar with. You remember we spoke about that. However, how about speaking to Cuz? Because I know that he's very, very good in that particular area as well. Maybe he's got some more resource. Now, saying that in two different ways, you're going to get two completely different responses there. So I have frameworks, and those examples I gave you there were based on frameworks to be able to say no and still keep your mates, okay? Problem is that people they're not skilled in that communication. So giving them those tools very often can help them with that. But here's the dirty little secret that I've stumbled onto. And I don't know if we mentioned it last week, but I think if we did mention it, it's going to be good to revisit, is that bosses and team members, so leaders and team members, they don't always know exactly what's going on with each other. And they both have their own insecurities. And what I mean by that is, you have a team member who has got this thought process of their boss, which is, my boss will not give me more work than what they think I'm capable of doing. That's a belief that I think a lot of people have to take on. Then you have a boss or a leader who's thinking, you know what? I employ professional people. I will give them work until they tell me they have too much work to deal with. And I don't want to be too hands-on with my team because I don't want to be seen as a micromanager. So what you effectively have is two very, very different visions here. And it's amazing the amount of miscommunication that can fall between the two. There is effectively your team member thinking, I have to say yes to everything because my boss knows how much work I've got on and they won't give me anything they don't think I can do. And then you've got a boss or a leader who's thinking, we recruit good people, we have professional people. When they have too much, I expect them to push back. And I want to have a laissez-faire type of attitude with this management style, because I don't want people to feel that I'm micromanaging them. And mate, honestly, and folks, for those of you listening, I see this at every single workshop, particularly people who come to want to learn to be more assertive. Okay, so people come to assertiveness workshops. They want to learn to be more assertive. This is something that comes up again and again and again. And when I share this with people, along with how to say no and still keep your mates, it's such a beautiful reframe, because they think, oh my God, now they can actually see it from the leadership's point of view, and then obviously using the words to be able to say it. But now they feel okay for saying it, because we've broken that limiting belief that people will have, which is, my boss knows exactly how much is on my desk, and they won't ask me to do anything that I'm not capable of doing. And that they believe. Well, yeah, they don't know how much work I've got on. And again, this is one of the things that fires me up so much, because I have no other motivation other than seeing clients get better outcomes. That's my North Star. That's why I have to be able to share this stuff, and I have to be able to get this point across. Because then if the leadership and the attendees or the team members get this understanding, then they can start changing their approach, which is gold. It really is, and there's so much better communication. There's so much less frustration, I think, on both sides, that can lead to, to negative things,
Precisely. The main thing of communication, good communication, is making sure everyone stays on the same page a lot of the time. And
but again, the people have got different points of view.
Yeah.
The boss sees something one thing, and the team member sees it in another, and it's so easy for us just to say different points of view, but that's how it plays out. Yeah,
that's right. And we've spoken about it before. About if you really need to be leading, which is like seeing their point of view, seeing the world from their point of view. It's also about leading up and down. Like, you have to understand that your boss has got a lot of pressures on him as well. He hasn't probably got the time sometimes. Not that he doesn't want to be a micromanager, but he doesn't have the time to understand how much workload you've got on, or how your timeframes are, what you're getting it through. I always keep coming back to it, but that book of Chris Voss's, if you want to learn how to say no without saying no, he has a whole section on it. Stuff like exactly what you talked about. Instead of just sitting there when the boss asks you to do something, just saying no. Because that's never going to go well, sarcastically or not. But you can start asking, how urgent is this? Instead of saying no, okay, well, how urgent is it?
Yeah,
I've got a lot on here. Did you want me to? Which other project did you want me to bump or put a stop on, or can you give it to Paul?
Yeah,
just don't listen to what Paul says, because he's not as good as he thinks he is. And I mean, and one of the big ones is,
I'm pretty sure I can sell that idea, my friend.
I'm trying to be a salesman. I am. But one of the best ones that I use it all the time, is I'm just like, well, how am I supposed to do that?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're like, what? What do you mean? Like, well, I've got all this work on here. How am I supposed to do that? You let me know. And then that question also works well, because then half the time they'll end up solving the problem for you.
Yeah.
So if I say to you, how am I supposed to do that? I've got all this work on. How am I supposed to do it?
Yeah.
They'll go, well, leave that project aside. XYZ can wait, because that's 6 months down the road. And actually, ABC, I talked to them yesterday. So pump them and get this one in. They'll solve the problem for you.
Absolutely. That can certainly play through. Just one point on that as well, Cuz, is your tonality and the phrasing up of those words is going to be important.
Of course.
So often we can say, well, how am I supposed to do that? And it's like, now we're going down conflict. Well, but if it's like pre-framed with, awesome, yeah, I'm keen to do that. Could you just show me how I'm supposed to do this with regards to, or how you would like me to do this, or how you'd like me to find time to do it?
Yeah, a version of that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. Tonality, and that's all communication as well. How am I
supposed to do that?
Which is usually followed by throwing something across the office.
Yeah? Absolutely.
So not the best approach. Has its advantages, not the best approach.
Yeah.
Learning how to say no is a good one. Difficult conversations, and letting others know how you feel. That it can be as simple as that. Like, I'm under the pump here, mate.
Yeah.
I've got a lot on. Just some people, sometimes I find, are absolutely blind to others around them and what they're doing, because they're at work. They don't have it's not so much about not having the social skills. You've talked about it before, where you've got someone who's very technical based and just there to work. And someone who's a people person.
Yeah.
got the whole thing going on. And I don't care what's going on in your private life. I don't care what sports team won on the weekend. I really don't care. I'm here to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
They'll be oblivious to what's going on with you. And they'll just, like you said, just keep piling work on because that's what we do here.
Yes.
So there's that to consider as well.
Yep. That can be an issue too. That can absolutely be an issue too. Yeah, again, the human being. And I was thinking about it recently because I tend to sort of lose myself thinking about these things sometimes. But I'm thinking in so many different ways. I mean, I love business. I know you love business as well. I'm literally, it's learning about it, doing it, teaching it, and see other people being successful with it. Those are my finest addictions. But I can see massive conflicts between being a human being and doing business.
Yes.
I really, in so many of the human hardwiring and, with regards to, how we are, who we are. And, I mean, if you think back to, there's sort of the big thought process with regards to where do our behaviors come from? And is it DNA? Is it history? Is it memories through DNA? Is it 100% nurture, 100% nature? And these are broad questions, but it's like, I think human beings are better built for warfare than we are for business. That's not a good thing to say.
I know.
It's really not. It's not. I think from a hardwiring point of view, and I think that's maybe why, if you look through sort of the history of humanity, it's always been warfare. Warfare has always been there until sort of the last 60 years or so, where where the worlds weren't being conscripted to go to war. But the thing is then us moving into sort of agrarian and then into industry, big industry, and then into the commercial world. It's like, yeah, I think human beings, we've had millennia of hardwiring of base human behavior. And now we're moving into the world away from the barter system, We're not built to do this. But maybe that's where our place in the world is, my brother. That's what we're looking to do here, to help people move away from territorial military stances to better business, better outcomes in business.
Yes, better business. Agreed. I had the same thought process for years, though, where you just go to work. That's what it was on about. And I was in that mindset with a lot going on in my private life. The kids were growing up. I had enough stress there going, work for myself, money in and out. I got offered. So work for me was just work.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in you've got to have peace and in one part of your life, chaos in another. I'm a very big believer in yin and yang. And I see too many people with chaos at work and chaos at home.
Yeah.
Or peace and comfort at home, peace and comfort at work. Both those things I don't think are good. So I think if you've got chaos in one area, you need to even it out with the other. Beautiful. And I got offered quite a few times. I got offered supervisor roles, but I wasn't in a position to take it because I wasn't in the position to be worried about other people's problems when I had so many of my own. Beautiful. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it to the company or whoever was hiring me because it would have just ended in disaster.
Yeah,
I would have been able to get both because I would have been like, I used to say I have to be kind of a social worker and very aware of others' problems, like they're not showing up to work because their kids are crook and they've got this. Oh, I'm here, mate. My kids are crook. So I'd have that kind of attitude. So I didn't want to take that with me.
Yeah.
So I had to make sure I was very aware of that and say, listen, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not in the right headspace to do that now at a time in my life.
That's a hell of an insight there, guys. That is a massive degree of self-awareness, I think, because I see a lot of people getting their nose out of joint because they're not being put into leadership positions. And they don't realize it's like, listen, you are a world-class salesperson or tradie or what have you, and now you're getting your nose out of joint because somebody else got a leadership position. Let me tell you, maybe there's a status that comes with that saying you're a leader. Maybe there's a bump in pay, but you've got other things you have to worry about there. And I mean, I enjoy leadership as well. I have a very different mentality when I'm in a leadership role as opposed to when I'm in a sole trader role or entrepreneur role. But it's different skill sets. And The other thing as well with highly motivated people, they become a nightmare to work for, but also it's tough for them very often to be really good leaders unless they have a high degree of emotion of self-awareness, because very often very motivated people will flat out outwork you. They will outwork you. And here's the crazy thing. They start expecting other people, often consciously or subconsciously, to work as hard as they do. So if people are leaving work at 5 p.m., it's like, what are you doing? And it's like, and people got to realize that not everybody's as driven as you are, and that's a high degree of self-awareness right there, cuz, to be able to realize you weren't in the right space, because a lot of people would have said yes, the bump in pay, the status, you can, tell people this, tell people that, but to be able to step back and say, no, this is not in the right headspace to do it. Good on you, mate. 100%.
It was difficult. It was difficult to do because there were certain benefits with that role that I would get away from what I was doing currently, or back then, I should say. But I'd seen a lot now. I spent most of my time in my career on building sites surrounded by blokes.
Yeah.
And like you can see patterns in people, and the amount of divorces that I could nearly see coming.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that and it wasn't anything to do with the relationship breakdown or anything. It was chaos at home and chaos at work.
Yeah.
One would feed off the other.
Yeah.
And you could just tell they were in a horrible place. And I did so much. The guys that were close to me that I'd come across who were like that, I'd do so much to try and take a burden off them at work, because I knew what they were going through at home, and try to take more on to ease their burden. Sometimes it works. Sometimes they can get through it.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times it just became overwhelming, and they couldn't do both, and both would suffer, which was the horrible part. It was really quite horrible to see.
And then you have the other side as well of how people cope with stuff like that. They get involved with booze and whatever else, addictions, and the other stuff that comes with that, man. And again, this is, my heart breaks when I see that and hear that, and I can understand that. I've experienced that as well. But it's like, this is why I think it's so important to be working on your own professional and personal development. Because if you can develop these skills to reduce, here's what I believe, man, that stress that comes from work so often, especially the stuff that's, and I know I said this last week, but when you're outside of work, the stress of work still gives you the kind of stress that keeps you up at night. I think very often is down because we don't feel that we have the skill sets or the confidence to deal with what we're dealing with at work. So you have that deadline to meet. You don't think you've got the confidence to do it. You don't know how you're going to be able to do it. That causes stress. If you have got a particular person who's causing a lot of angst for you, you don't know how to deal with them. It's that confidence and skill sets to be able to deal with it. And once you're developing these skill sets, you get everything to a decent level. I'm qualified to talk about business. I'm probably not qualified to talk about life, but there we go. But then the fascinating thing is you get to a place where everything's good, but that's also dangerous, because now it's like, okay, I could go in and I can do this training half-assing it, and that's not a good mentality to have either, because that's where you come a cropper. So I think that very often there's a difference between negative stress, and I think there's good stress as well. And that certainly is what I look for, is good stress, is taking on bigger and bigger challenges. It's like, okay, we're up to this level now. Fantastic. What's the next monster we're looking to slay here? You know, and like doing this podcast. I mean, for you and I, but both of us, neither of us had run podcasts before. It's a new challenge, doing the Lunch and Learn webinars that are going to be coming up. Working with different sectors, new clients, all of these things, but it's I think the stress that you choose is what builds you. I think the stress that often what's thrown on you, that's what can cause problems for people. I think there's growth from it as well, but choosing to take on a stressful situation, I think very often can develop you. They actually talk about PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder, and then PTSG, so post-traumatic stress growth. So when, some people have gone through something and then it causes that breakdown, and then you have some people who go through something and it actually creates that growth for them. You evolve, you develop. And I think I know there's some papers written on it that I went through many, many years ago, but it was I think choosing the stress to go through is what starts to build that resiliency and that strength as well, which is good.
Yeah, it's first I've heard of that, but it makes perfect sense. You do
Yeah,
hard things regardless of the outcome. You learn, you grow, you become more resilient, you go again.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
along that way,
Mm.
which I think is always that growth mindset, good thing to have and good things to be aware of as you're moving through life. Now you spoke about it then, time management, recovery, rest, time away, things like that. So time management in terms of um, maybe even switching off, downtime between, time management, focusing your energy where your energy is going to focus. Like if you've got a deadline coming up,
Yeah,
everything else gets put to one side and you focus on that. Learning where to focus your energies. We talked about it last week, areas of control, what's in your control and area of influence versus what's outside. So try not to waste any energy or very little energy on that stuff. Work out what's in your control and what can be done. I'm always a big fan of if you have a few things to be done and you need to get the ball rolling, you need to try a simple one.
yeah,
We can get an easy win, and
yeah,
then work from there. Try and work yourself into that flow state, and away you go.
absolutely.
So time management, I think, is pretty good, and setting boundaries around work life, something we just brushed up against then. Um, what are some good techniques around setting some boundaries up, personal boundaries at work, and also personal in terms of, like you said, you're working for a boss who's high maintenance. He's a high achiever. You want to walk out the door at 5 o'clock, and he's like, "Where are you going?" Or you
Yeah,
get emails actually, I saw a good one the other day where a leader, I think he was a CEO, he sent an email to one of his team members and asking all these questions. But at the bottom it said, "Now I know everyone's at a different point of their life with different things to concentrate on. As you can see, I sent this at 11 o'clock at night. You just reply when you can.
mm.
I understand that this is probably not the best time to reply. I probably don't even want you looking at this until Monday, but you reply to me when you get the chance." So being aware of others, like you still have to send the email. He's working all weekend,
Yeah,
but being aware the person he's sending it to, "Hey, listen, mate, I understand I've sent this at a certain time, but you get back to me when you can. You fit into your routine." So setting up those boundaries around people or for yourself, or around people who seem a bit overbearing. What are some techniques on that?
yeah, because I think that there's one thing that I'm going to share now that I don't think I've shared before. I certainly haven't mentioned it, I don't think, in our discussions, but the term pre-frame we've used before, but I'm going to use the term pre-frame to actually be able to manage boundaries. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean, effectively being able to say some words before I get into an interaction. So if I take pre-frame, again, frame is defined as, the way I'm defining it anyway, is the context and direction of a conversation. Pre is obviously before. So I'm going to pre-frame it. I'm going to say some words before I say what I was going to say. So a great technique for this, and very often this question comes up after I talk to people about the communications empathy mantra, which is listen to people like they're about to tell you something's going to positively impact your life. And then there's always a hand that comes up and says, "Paul, what about people who share too much?"
Yes,
It's like they catch
oversharing.
you and it's like they want to talk to you for 45 minutes and you just don't have the time. And my client's telling me that that this person doesn't have a degree of self-awareness, so they're not going to be aware of it, yada, yada, yada. But you're a good listener, so they love being there. So here's what I've very often found, and I find this with clients as well, is if I am dealing with a client, or let's say an individual that I know who just loves to talk, but I don't have a lot of time. I've got a couple of options here. Let's say I'm on the call and they start talking with 20 minutes and they're telling me about the weekend, and I'm thinking, I don't have this time. I can say, "Okay, listen, enough of that. Why did you call me?" Now that is going to break down that relationship. And I think a lot of people are terrified of that, okay? Because it's like you're going to come off as negative, and I don't feel comfortable doing that. And you can understand that, particularly as us human beings, I think largely are designed to be agreeable. Now, the problem with that is I think people get their noses out of joint, because if I'm sharing with you, cuz if I'm telling you 20 minutes what I got up to over the weekend, and you just had a bag full of this, and I'm not picking up on any of your cues that you want to get on to the next thing, and you say to me, Paul, listen, I'd love to talk to you, mate, but I don't have this amount of time. Now, what my internal dialogue is potentially, and I think what the fear could often be, is that the interpretation is what I'm sharing with you is not of enough value for you to pay attention to me. And I think that's often where people are worried about. They're worried about that interaction. And I think that often people will, particularly if people are not, if they don't have their professional self-esteem in the right place, then very often that's their interpretation. What I've just shared with Cuz was not enough. You didn't hear me. You didn't give me that feedback. Now, we could debate that as well, but here's the power of it. Here's what I will do is, if I see that person coming to me, or I get a call from this person, or I've got a client that's come in for a meeting. Okay, this is a great example when it's high pressure stuff, and I've got like literally half an hour with this client, or I've got maybe a minute with the person that I'm talking to. What I want to do is I want to mention that degree of limitation before I get into the conversation. So if I'm talking with a person who is just loves to talk to me because I'm a good listener, potentially, then I might say, "Hi, Craig. Great to see you. We're passing in the corridor. Craig, great to see you, mate. Listen, I've got 3 minutes because I've got to be at a meeting, or I've got a phone call I need to make, or what have you. Got 3 minutes, but tell me, how was the weekend? What you been up to?" So now I've just pre-framed that there is 3 minutes, and then I've asked you the question. So now it's not that I've belittled what you're sharing with me. Now I've told you up front, I've set those degrees of limitations. Okay. It's the same as if there's a client that's come through, who's got some issues or what have you. It's like, okay, what do you want to work on, Paul? I want to work on X, Y, and Z. Fantastic. Okay, so listen, I've got half an hour. This is what we're going to do. Point X, point Z, point Y up on the board, and we're going to work through that. Point X. You happy with that? Fantastic. Work through it. So we've checked all that stuff out. So effectively, I'm setting expectations early on, because I'll tell you this, I think that a lot of bruised egos and conflict and negative vibes towards each other often can come from mismanaged expectations. So if you think I've got all day to speak to you and I cut you short, now it's going to feel like some degree of disrespect there. That pre-frame is so powerful. It's beautiful. It really is. Particularly if you say, listen, if you're the one who leads and then ask the question with regards to, I've got 3 minutes, I'm going to be on the call, but tell me, how was X, Y, and Z? So yeah,
love it
quite nicely.
Love it. That I think works really well. I've used that myself quite a few times, especially on phone calls. But yeah, always like that approach. So, and it usually focuses people. Like I could sit here and listen to you for half hour, and I would have switched off and forgotten the important part you're going to tell me. Or you've got 3 minutes to tell me what the story is before I get distracted anyway and walk off.
Another thing that I realized during COVID was, and this is hopefully helpful to people as well, is and COVID really brought this out, because of course you had a lot of people who were naturally gregarious people who didn't have a lot of people to talk to. Yeah. So those phone calls, instead of just a hi and a bye in the corridor, those phone calls could go on for like way too long. And I had clients who were saying, Paul, listen, this is the situation. How do I deal with that? My answer is, if I see a phone call coming in from somebody who's likely to want to have a yarn, I might miss the call and send them a text message saying, hey, I'm in and out of pieces of admin here. Any question I can answer for you, please text it to me and I'll get it to you. I'll get the answer to you as quickly as possible. So you're using different modalities to be able to be as efficient and effective as you can with your time.
Well, I know firsthand that people were very talkative during COVID. As you know, I spent a lot of time working in hospitals, doing upgrades and working with some fantastic people. But everyone was starved of human interaction. And so some of just the usual, as you give a nod on the way past, as you're walking past someone, or how you going, how you been, how are you, mate? That could turn to a 45-minute conversation of what they would. I knew people were starving for human interaction when I'd go home, and my kids would be waiting to talk to me as I opened up the Hi, Dad, how are you? What did you do today? Whoa, back off. What's going on here? So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all.
That's
Uh,
when family time becomes a bit of a question. Work and family time
yeah, it
when
was
your
good
kids
times.
don't want to spend time with you anymore. You know.
Yeah, you usually can't see them. They're all in their rooms on their phones and stuff. All of a sudden, they're waiting for you at the door to know what's going on. So it was good times. It's good times. Now, I'd like to turn your attention to routines and habits because I think there's some really good areas of gain here, and not around basic stuff. I'll start off by saying I love routines. I have a few routines and habits, but having said that, I'm adaptable, so I don't need to go through these all the time. I am also very kind of fluid. I can move with the times without having to have a morning routine. I can get up and get into it. So
Yeah.
habits, routines, Paulie, I think they're quite important in terms of everything from being able to let your mind relax
Yeah.
because you're not having to think about things, right through to being able to trigger or anchor a certain your brain at certain times, right up to getting prepared and looking forward. So maybe getting your house in order a little bit first and then not being hit with so much stuff. So routines and habits, I think they can be quite powerful and quite a good, quite useful in personal life, but also in business as well.
Yeah.
So routines, Paulie, what what areas do you think they can get good gains in, or how can they be used well?
Yeah, I think routines are awesome. I think particularly they if you have a good solid routine that is consistent, it's going to remove the energy that you have to put into the cognitive energy that you have to put into decision making processes. And I know Steve Jobs was renowned for this with regards to always wearing his polo neck if he was going to go out and present. He didn't have to burn any additional cognitive energy on anything else. So I think if you have a routine, almost by definition, you are not burning cognitive energy on pondering what you should do. So I'm a fan of routine. There are things that I will do, including particularly around sleep. The last year, I've been focused very, very, very much on sleep because I was having issues with sleep last year, as you remember. But this year, just really making some massive improvements with sleep as best I can. And in order to get high quality sleep, exercise has been a big thing, which, it's either lifting or jiu-jitsu or going for a walk. In the mornings, waking up. And if I'm facilitating face-to-face, I'll have a particular routine. If I'm facilitating virtually, I'll have a particular routine. And if the day is no facilitation that day, and it's just admin, then I'll have a routine for that day as well. But I think that routines, particularly around health, is a big one as well, because it's this cognitive, I think it's the one-off. When you do something healthy one-off, you feel good about it. But when you do something healthy on the regular, and you made a great point with regards to, even just your routine for buying, fat-free mints or normal mints. It's like
Yeah.
it's that compounded effect of what you do on the regular. If it's a routine, you don't even have to think about it. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of routines. Routines at work for me. In the mornings is cold showers. In the evenings is cold showers, just for a minute as well at nighttime. Breathing exercise in the morning, breathing exercise in the evening. I haven't done as much stretching as I should be doing. But yeah, I know what I'm going to wear if I'm facilitating face to face. I'll do meal prep on a Sunday very often, depending on what the week's looking like. So I'll have that routine as well. Have the same foods, pretty much along those lines.
Yep. Yeah. I'm pretty much the same as you. I've come to understand that the more I see it as kind of a form of self-help in terms of helping out future me. Meal prep. I can get up, I can do my same meal prep at night for the next day. I realize that there's only, I don't know, 7 or 10 meals that I eat on the regular. You know what I mean? All the time. So making those as easy to put together, meal prep or whatever, whether it's breakfast burrito, overnight oats or whatever, it allows me to just relax in the knowledge that that's ready for tomorrow.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also with habits are very good in terms of making you consistent, making you seem dependable because you're always depending on yourself to get that done, and you do it and then you become consistent. So you get that repeatable which shows up, and it can be a form of, you can be seen as trustworthy if you're consistently
Consistent.
turning up, same kind of ready to go, always got this, always ready to go. If you're consistently late and hungover, that's a different thing, but we're looking for positives here and the positive kind of outcomes. And then there's comfort and security in a lot of these habits too, you know. Sometimes you can get really, use my daughter's favorite word, discombobulated when you're out of
discombobulated.
you know, you're all over the place. Well, it happens with kids. With kids, they have to, there's two schools of thought. And I saw it firsthand with our kids. You put them in a routine, like they go to bed at the same time, they have a bath, they go to bed, you get the same kind of routine, they go to sleep, they sleep, you wake up, same time, same kind of foods, breakfast, school, that you get into that routine. When you travel, like we used to take them to New Zealand a lot, they're all out of their routines and it was a mess.
Yeah.
So, but people would say you don't want to be in a routine because it kind of stifles that creativity, stops you being who you want to be. Whereas I see it a different way in terms of routines can allow you, like what you said, to let your brain's cognitive ability release and be creative. It's like a form of saving energy.
There you go. I like that. Yeah.
And then the other part of that is I like to be prepared and a little bit of forward thinking in terms of, like if it's Sunday, like today's Sunday, and I've got job on tomorrow, I'll spend 5 or 10 minutes having a think about what I need for that, or roughly thinking through. Now, in our job, it can be very spontaneous depending on what shows up and how it shows up, and you know, whether there's a car parked in the way or things like that. You know, we're going to close a road and something else has happened. We can't do that, so we have to be able to think on the fly. But being able to plan ahead for what you're doing tomorrow or the coming week allows you to get into a bit of a good mindset around, okay, mentally prepare for these things, but also kind of takes the sting out of any surprises that you might have. Like the more you can think forward and see what problems you'll have, the less likely you'll be overwhelmed when those things do prop up, because you put a little bit of time into that. So getting organized. And the perfect one that you taught me was around negotiations. And again, dealing with difficult people.
Yeah.
If you just, because it happens a lot on building sites, you're in a negotiation, before you realize it, you walk around the corner and bang. You know, someone showed up with a problem or he's got this, and you're in the middle of a negotiation without even knowing it. So the more you can prepare for that, it's not as structured as maybe the corporate world where you've got a set time and date, we're going to sit down and bang this deal out. But that also has its benefits. Like you wouldn't walk into a negotiation for a contract without having some level of preparation.
Absolutely.
Kind of take that mindset on with other interactions during the day or just some forward planning. I think you can give yourself a lot of relief and calm yourself down a lot, you know, and kind of manage not only your expectations, but your stress levels.
Yeah, 100%.
By doing that. Yeah. What do you think?
I think you're quite right there, man. I think there's nothing quite like a unexpected shock, a surprise that you didn't want, that doesn't even give you the time to load up for. Yes. You know, it just bangs itself into you. And if you're prepared for it, then it's like, okay, you got that peace of mind, you can get through it. But how do you prepare for it if it's not something that or how do you manage it if it was not something that you prepared for? And I think about these different things. Experience really pays off with that as well. So, yes. You know, if you had somebody who's really proactive with this type of thing, to be able to get them to, you know, to practice thinking about lots of different scenarios, you know, that could come up, and that you can get blindsided with. And, you know, if you go there mentally, in that context, you have a better chance of going there physically as well, you know?
That's right. Or you could be like me and you could be purposely looking for that now.
Sure, absolutely.
That's what I'm looking for, especially in terms of negotiations. You like that, those unknowns that can try to explain to the boys at work. Like you've got stuff that you kind of know. You're unknowns in terms of, okay, Dave hasn't shown up because he's sick. Like you couldn't have known that, but you kind of know that can happen.
Yeah.
Or the car won't start because the battery's flat, or it's raining and things like that. So unknowns, but you know about those ones. It's the ones that you could never come across before. You just like whatever it might be. We had one where we would pull down a gantry in a back lane in the city, and we rock up there, and exactly where we need to put the crane, it was all sorted out the week before. They had an excavator that they needed to move. The night before, delivery truck had come along and smashed the side of the excavator.
Wow.
Broke the hinges on the door, so we couldn't open the door. We couldn't smash the windows because they had the security grills on the inside. I couldn't get the keys in. We had to and it was like, you can't prepare for that.
Yeah.
So
You do the best you can, what you have, and hope for the best outcomes there. Yeah.
That's it. So I'm currently looking for those. And while I'm on my way to look for those, I always make sure I see where a coffee shop is so that when those things happen, you got to wait 45 minutes from getting the excavator. You slide over there, you get yourself a coffee, and you kick back and relax.
There you go.
That's when you have the big conversation about what you did on the weekend. But the other one, and I know you use this, you're a big fan of this one, is using the routines that you have. Like you said, you've got a different setup for when you go face to face as opposed to a webinar. Is a trigger or an anchor for your brain to take on a certain role.
Yeah.
Now, I think you use a bit of music. Yeah. I mean, routines are good, but a lot of people use music, or they can use certain other routines to get themselves in that mindset to attack that. So talk to me a little bit about that one and how you use it.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm taking on something that's that's intimidating me to any degree, or is getting me anxious, or
like when we roll together, I'll make you anxious.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah, maybe the first time.
I'll make that a timestamp. Wait on.
Is if I'm about to take on something that everything I want is on the other side of it, it's going to be daunting, it's going to be big, it's going to be scary, and it's going to be worth it. So at that state, what I want to do is I want to fire up I want to change my state. So I want to put myself in a state of being, mental state where I'm ready to go. And it's like, I'll listen to some music. People might call it psych up, but it's getting into my head. It's game time now, and it's like my whole sense will become heightened, along with the adrenaline rush, the slight adrenaline rush is starting to pulse. That will be, my nerves are getting ready. It's like I'm getting ready to rock and roll with this. A great example of this is a big presentation. Going out for a big presentation, you've got 45 minutes to be presenting something that's going to be worth a lot of money to whoever's paying you to be there. You're going out to do a job, and you want to really bring your best possible self there. And I'll use music from previous times in my life where it anchors me back into that state. There's the parts of me that I don't want in that room at that time will sit down and quieten down. And the parts of me that I do want, that are going to serve me in that moment, they will hear that rallying cry, and we're in that frame of mind. Absolutely.
The clans will come home to roost, brother?
The clans. You can hear the war drums and the bagpipes.
Gosh. The music is very motivating, can be very motivating for me, soothing. I'll probably butcher this, but it was a little while ago, and music can be so powerful and get you in such a frame of mind and anchor you into that it was an interview from a wheelchair athlete who, they used to do the road races.
Yeah.
I think they're the ones who have got the third wheel out the front. They do the marathons and the long distance races. I can't remember whether it was just in training or in I think it was in competition as well. In the pre-staging area, they had to ban headphones and music because these guys would listen to like techno beat, very bassy, kind of repetitive music, and get them into such a state and just turn their arms into pistons.
Really?
It got to the point where guys were just passing out instead of stopping.
Wow.
It was that powerful. They could put themselves in that much of a state. I would hope that it was around maybe wearing the earmuffs and listening to the music while you were going. But I'm pretty sure I remember part of the scenario that he was talking about was they banned them in the lead up to a race as well for a couple of hours before. because it was having that much of an effect on some of the athletes during competition that it was really starting to harm them. So it can put you in a very powerful place.
That's incredible. I vaguely remember some story about Jonah Lomu. He would every time he'd be running, he'd hear a beat, like a drum beat. And when he got the ball and he wanted to accelerate, or he was on the cross cover, he would just amplify. And I'm probably speaking under correction here, but that drum beat would increase, so the tempo would get quicker as he was like moving with a cross cover, or he had the ball or something like that, and he wanted to go full out. He would be listening to a drum beat as well. That's fascinating, man. Absolutely,
it is. There was cricketers, bowlers in cricket, who took it from long jump and high jump athletes, where they'd have a particular song in their mind playing as they ran in to help them keep their rhythm and their smoothness as they run, so it helped with their footsteps.
Wow.
So that was another technique as well. So very powerful set of techniques there. Well, Paulie, I think that's about covered most of it off. Obviously, everyone's individual, have their own set of problems, and their own ways of dealing with stuff, but hopefully we've given them insight on some other techniques as well. Feel free to reach out, folks, if there's other stuff you want us to expand on.
Yeah.
Go into more detail on or help you with. We're not hard to find.
Absolutely.
Easy to find around. Paulie's out lumberjacking in his clothes most weekend, chopping trees down the local. Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing as well, folks, there's been a couple of people ask me about this, but I'm going to make a mention of it now. We'll probably do it moving forward as well. If there's anybody you know who's looking for training in the leadership, communications, or sales world, reach out to us. We're always happy to have a conversation and see if we're a good fit as well. We're working with a lot of different business sectors as well. So, as a small business, always keen to have conversations with potential clients we could work with. If you know anybody like that, then we're happy to have that conversation and always appreciate an introduction.
Absolutely. Paulie, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Go and sharpen up that axe and get back into it, bro. And I will catch you next week or on the match during it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. See you next week.
Take care. Cheers.